I would not miss the Tariq, Elisa, and Mary show.
We aim to please. How are you today, Ron? You're good?
And Renee. Sorry, Renee. Forgot you.
Morning.
So as we're joining, if you could type your name and your organization in the chat box, we would appreciate that.
That's great. Yeah, we have to take attendance as our sign-in sheet.
Yes. So we'll wait just a couple more minutes as people join us.
That's great. I actually need to run and blow my nose. I've got allergies. Excuse me.
Yeah, it's that time of year for sure.
Yeah, right. Thanks. Excuse me. I'll be right back.
So if you're just now joining us, if you could type your name and your organization in the chat box, we'd appreciate that. Hi, Cindy Rocket. We have Cindy is here, Rhonda, Emily, Laura.
Cindy Rocket is a cool name.
It is. It's such a cool name.
Well, she is a super cool person. So
she is. Great. Well, I think we can go ahead and get started. And as other people join, we'll just recognize them and have them type their name and organization in the chat box. So welcome everybody, and thank you for being here. I am Elisa Lapolt, and I'm the relatively new engagement director for TCCN. And Renee, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yes, Renee Dillard, and I do administrative support for TCCN. And I'm sorry, I've got wet hair. I just realized it shows on camera.
You are fine. We're going to start with just some general announcements. Of course, if you could mute yourself, keep your phones off, that would be great. We will post this recording later. So if you're watching us, if you couldn't attend today and you're watching us later, we're glad you're able to do so. And we appreciate all of those who have been able to meet with us on our TCCN road tour. It's been great. I've met Cindy, Rhonda. It's been really nice to meet everybody. And the rest of our team is on their way to Chattanooga right now. So we'll be meeting with our clinics down there. Renee, do you have some announcements you'd like to make?
I do. So if you have been watching the newsletter, you've probably seen that we have launched a new member engagement platform through an entity called Your Membership. And so I'm going to share my screen and just do like a really quick 3 to 5 minute kind of walkthrough. And then also look for a meeting on June, did we say 25th?
22nd.
22nd. We will do a little bit more of a deep dive into Your Membership, and we also will be talking through some social media tips and tricks. So I'm going to go ahead and share that screen. So this is, of course, the homepage of our website. We've always got our upcoming events. That social media training will be dropped here later here today. But to get to the membership portal, you go to membership and benefits of membership. And then you click the image. And I'm already logged in, and this is what my homepage looks like in Your Membership. And so I'm able to go in and see things that are coming up on the calendar. We've got our social media. But what's really important is making changes to your profile. So to do that, you would click Profile Updates. I'm sorry, I realize I'm going a little bit fast. Find your name in the top right-hand corner. Go to Account and Settings. And you're able to update your email address, your website, your address. And then we've got a lot of questions down here that we'd appreciate if you answered. So your budget, grants that you're a part of, services that you offer, things that you're interested in, so that we can better serve you. And of course, how did you hear about us? Which is a pretty standard question. So I just wanted to give you a little mini walkthrough of your membership. For now, there's not a ton of stuff on the site, but if you could go in and start updating your profiles, that would be a huge help to us as we move into membership renewal season. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We are excited to be working with this new platform. It's going to be very efficient and effective for us as an organization and a network. So, hi. So if you're just joining us, welcome. And if you could type your name and your organization in the chat box, we would appreciate it. And we are going to introduce our speaker. Tariq, do you want to say hello? And I think most people know you, but just say a couple words.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Tariq. Great to be here. Welcome back. I am our TCCN's program evaluator. I'm a consultant and I'm program evaluator for TCCN. And so happy to see all of you all again here. This is our fourth or fifth segment here on our strengthening proposals for funding. And we're going to get into abstracts and statements of need a little bit today. I think I know most of you all a bit. Y'all know my style. I'm going to kind of lean heavy. The PowerPoint will be posted, so there's going to be lots of information you can kind of go back to. Alicia will tell us where it's posted. I believe it'll be posted on our website, but you get all that information for you all to always go back to it. And as usual, please, as we go, just, chime on in so we can make this real. I'd like as much as possible to help, help suit you in your own situations. And I want to keep the first part as short as possible because I definitely want to circle back around to Verity's proposal, small mini grant proposals that we have kind of circulating that are due next week too. So I want to make sure we have some time to address any questions and kind of talk about some of the good feedback we've been getting with the folks that we've been working with. So all that being said, welcome aboard. Remember, just throw your questions on out there. Please drop them in the chat if they're kind of comprehensive questions you think, or just shout them on out there. I'd much rather address things as we go, if at all possible. I think it's a better use of everybody's time. So that being said, let's rock and roll.
All right, so I'm going to get the PowerPoint up, and I just also want to say this is great timing. You all should have received an email from Annabelle last night announcing that the safety net funds are opened. Great news for those of you all who haven't participated. For those of you who have, that's great. This new opportunity is available for people who don't currently participate. So watch for that in your email. So I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Okay. So this is our module 4, strengthening proposals for funding, developing abstracts and statements of need.
That's right. And there's a third thing here I don't think we're going to get into, but also impact statements. I know we have another segment coming up for conducting needs assessments. So I think what I'll do is I'll also submit a handout. I don't have it on my PowerPoint today because it's slightly different for impact statements, but all these things are written slightly differently for different funding sources, and we'll get into that too. That's Rockily. Thanks.
All right, so we'll get into the abstract and project summary. So what is a scientific abstract? Condensed version or summary of your research study, the means of conveying what was done and why, what was found, and the implications.
Right. So big picture here, broad strokes. And as this goes, we'll get a little bit deeper. So this your abstract needs to be a complete summary of everything you're doing in your project, be it for your poster presentation, or be it for a conference, or be it just to represent your work in general for a funder. So the idea here is to kind of take everything that you have in your proposal and be able to condense it into this 30 lines for the big dogs. Keep rocking, Alicia.
Okay. Relevance to public health. So your abstract should include a brief background, aims, objectives, significance of the research and relevance, unique features and innovation of the project, methodology or action steps to be used, expected results, and description of how your results will affect other research.
That's important. Now, depending on if you've written for NIH or for the CDC, your kind of implications for future research or your association, whatever you're doing is relevant to the funder. So that's where your public health impact statement, or it kind of demonstrates not only that you're doing great work within your own community and your own organization, but this is where you also tie it in. Remember, back to our module 2, I don't remember which one it was, but back to our taking the, let's see, what were these called? I'm forgetting the name of the original section, but it's okay. So you remember taking our overall arching funding objectives and making sure you're tying those in to your funding objectives too. So that's always the big deal. That needs to be represented in your logic models. It needs to be represented in your management plans, and it also has to be reflected here in your abstract. So all of these same, remember, we're always ringing the same bells throughout your proposals, but make sure that it's strongly represented in your abstract. Keep moving, Alicia. Thank you.
Okay, so here's some suggestions. Be complete but brief. Use all the space allotted. Avoid describing past accomplishments and use of the first person I. Write it so it reflects the entire application, and remember that the abstract will be used for purposes other than the review, such as to provide a brief description of the grants, presentations, and dissemination to the public.
Thank you. So that avoid past stuff in the abstract is important. That's usually good in your statements of need. That's usually good in your lit review, where you kind of do a bit background of why you're doing what you're doing. But you want to really preserve your abstract for talking about what you're actually doing. So you want the title, you want the background of what you're doing, of course, in terms of actual study design. And I'm using these terms lightly. So your project design or your study design, please use these words interchangeably. But remember, your abstract is not really for building the backstory. It is it's truly for representing the project that you are proposing that you are submitting for proposal. Keep rocking, Alicia.
Here's some more tips. Read the instructions and don't wait until the last day to prepare, because these things take a lot longer than you think.
They do. I can't reinforce this enough. It's tempting because these the cycles roll around, but the more times you have to reflect on this and kind of rewrite these line for line, the better off you are. Keep moving, Alicia. Thank you.
Some additional tips: have someone with experience review your abstract. Write in active voice, like we found, we discovered, we examined.
Right.
And of course, double check for errors, typos. Meet the word count limitation. Only use acronyms like TCCN after you have defined them.
That's so important. Yeah, don't alphabet soup them and don't word soup them as much as possible. Try to shoot straight on your abstracts, because everybody's BS meter is up and looking for them. So just make sure that you are kind of sticking to it here. You are citing what you're saying, and you're reflecting the acronyms that you're using have been well defined. Thank you, ma'am. Let's rock. Cooking with gas here. And these and also these study tips. I mean, these kind of tips things, and these are very important. So plug these in, snapshot them, whatever, everybody. But always, and the idea here that you let someone else run it past somebody, let somebody with experience check out your abstract. All of these things are very, very useful. Anytime they're submitting these high-level NIH grants, they have several studios that they submit with each other, where they kind of do an internal peer review. We can set that up amongst ourselves. Happy to review abstracts amongst the cohorts. In fact, while we were doing some of our disparities subaward work with some of our members, it was recommended that we may have some ways that our smaller clinics can learn from some of our larger clinics. So I think that it would be great for us to have some of these internal studios or these TCCN studios where we can bounce abstracts back and forth off of one another, and use some very useful strategies that a lot of you all are doing. So let's also revisit that. Let's rock, Alicia.
Okay. So these are the 4 C's of your abstracts. They should be complete, cover the major parts of the project, study or analysis, concise, meaning no extraneous words. The word extraneous is extraneous.
It sure is. Thank you for catching that. Right.
Clear and cohesive.
Yeah. So thank you. I mean, that speaks for itself. Try not to be extraneous. try to be succinct, and try to be as simple as possible, and only use shop talk when necessary. Now, it depends on who you're talking to. Again, if you're writing the NIH something, if you're writing it for some high-tech biochem folks, you're going to use a lot more jargon, and they understand that. But for what we're doing, for a lot of our work, for surveillance research and for public health data, that needs to be written in a very common context. So be very careful with acronyms and shop talk and jargon. Let's rock.
Okay. So we'll start with the title. It should clearly describe what your abstract is about. Be interesting. You want your readers to learn more. Oftentimes your title helps conference attendees decide if they want to attend your talk or visit your poster.
Yeah, and this is the reason I grabbed that too. So this is kind of from SAMHSA. Remember, they're also your poster presentations, your conferences in public health and in surveillance data. There's a big push, of course, toward information dissemination. So the idea, at the end of all your grants, they want to know your dissemination plan, or what are you going to do? How are you going to let the world know about all the great work that you do? So it's important to think about your abstract for conferences as well as for funding sources. So as you're thinking about how to actually word your title, and these should be some of the last things that you're doing too. The abstract is one of the last things that you actually write, because you need to take your time and really figure out how to adjust the title to really fit the project as it stands, or as executed. Let's rock.
Okay. The background section. This is the part that explains why your abstract is important or novel. It should provide the context or explanation for doing the study. Not the whole history, but just what's relevant in the current situation. What is already known, what is not known, and what do you intend to examine? You should state the aim of the study, and it should be brief, 1 to 3 sentences.
That's a great point right there. Now, all of that needs to happen in a very short period of time. So again, NIH talks about aims. You may be talking about your hypotheses, whatever the question is you're trying to answer here. Your study question needs to be reflected there as well. So you're going to do a bit of background about why this is necessary, and how there were deficiencies in data or gaps somewhere that you kind of lay out the case for why this is relevant, and then you will state your hypothesis, or you will state your study question, or you will state your aim. Again, NIH uses aims pages, so you have aim 1 and aim 2, and then behind each one of those aims is kind of how you intend to execute each aim. But for us, once again, we're doing a lot of surveillance data. So this is more about study questions that you are trying to address, and remember, always in the context of whatever the funding objective is laid out. So always refer again to your RFP. Let's rock.
So here's an example of title and background. So this title is weak.
Yeah, bad and good. And I think these are good for us too. We're going to do these for each one, but they're going to give us kind of a weak and a strong. I shouldn't say bad and good. A weak and strong. It's a weak and a strong example.
Mm-hmm. So you can see how the weak one, sexual risk among MSM, is just kind of vague. And then the strong ones are a little bit more, elaborates a little bit more.
Read a strong one for me, Alicia.
The strong one?
Yeah.
So the weak one, sexual risk among MSM. The strong one is sexual risk among men who have sex with men and a national probability sample. Prevalence of risky behaviors and temporal trends, UK 2012.
There you go. So the title actually grasps a whole lot of information. Sexual MSM is a vague title. It's something that you may do in a hashtag, right? Something that you, if you wanted to get somebody's attention to kind of get something streaming or something. It's enough. It has a lot of ambiguity associated with it. That's not the reason that that's a weak title, is because you don't want ambiguity in your title. If at all possible, you want to kind of designate the study design, and the population inside of the title within itself. So be careful to strengthen your statements as much as possible, and always, as you write, try to eliminate the weak and I guess reinforce the strong as much as possible. So I think these are important tips to focus on. Let's rock, Alicia.
Okay. Methods section. It should explain what you did, population studied, quantitative or qualitative methods, like measures, statistical analyses, the time frame and how long it took. And this should be 3 to 8 sentences.
Right. Gives you a little bit more length because you have to do a little more work here. Now, depending on your study design, like most of us, we're doing questionnaires. We seek behavior change, so we're looking for kind of community behavioral change as well. So a lot of what we do is with self-report and such. So if we have a qualitative study design, here is where we lay out the design of the study within itself. Quant is a little more straightforward. If you're just counting numbers of MSMs or of counting numbers of individuals doing, if you're doing more observational research where you're kind of just studying or looking at what's happening, which is not much what we're doing. We are trying to engage in effects. So we are looking at changes in behavior and changes in effects. So for us, we will lay out mainly qualitative, and for some of you all, mixed methods designs, because I know that we have some larger clinics involved as well. But we have to lay all of that out in this 3 to 5 sentences here, which is a much more condensed version of your methodology section. Remember, your abstract is reflecting your entire proposal. So your proposal has background of the study, it has methodology, it has findings, results, it has implication for future research and such. And what your abstract is doing is it is summarizing the critical components of each one of those sections. And when you have all your sections flushed out correctly, you are really just pulling the your power ranking sentences straight out. You're pulling them and it's all being reflected in your abstract. A good abstract should stand alone, and they make a lot of decisions based on that abstract. So it's really important. Let's rock.
Okay. So here's some other examples. Here's a week. An intervention was delivered and evaluated. One intervention component sought to improve students' awareness and utilization of condom availability programs. 6 intervention, 6 control high schools participated. And then, so this is all vague. You see no statistics. Right. And so this, Tariq, do you want me to read the strong one?
Please, thank you.
Okay, so a multi-level intervention was delivered and evaluated across 5 years in a large public school district in Los Angeles. One component sought to improve students' awareness and utilization of condom availability programs in schools by working with key personnel, particularly nurses, to more effectively implement district policies. 6 intervention and 6 control high schools participated in the study. And then here it talks about the number of students in the study. See, I can't really read this.
It's cool. That's good. That's good enough.
Is that enough? Okay.
Yeah, and so you see there the contrast. So, and if you're writing about your community health workers, or you're showing the impact of your coordinated model, and you have community health workers working with other churches and local church organizations, and they come together to do X amount of workshops geared toward decreasing vaccine hesitancy. And you have this huge program that all of these working parts that reflect that. In this section, in this 5 to 8 lines, you will kind of lay out the components of individuals, or the groupings that reflect your study design that kind of made all of it happen. So I wanted to give some examples of how detailed you should try to be, and the more detailed the better when it comes down to these objective measures, because at the end of the day, this is all reflected in your study design. I guess I said enough. Let's go, Alicia.
Okay. So we'll go to the results section.
Yay.
Explain what you found, your main findings with data, describe how your results pertain to your study aim or hypothesis. Statements as to be completed or to be presented are not acceptable. Remember to report non-significant differences too. And this is usually the longest section, from 3 to 8 sentences.
Right. And then so that's important too. So non-significant differences a lot of times lead to your implications for future findings, or they may justify why you have to make some changes to your study design in the first place. So they may not be significant, again, depending on your statistical model there, your Z-scores and all this, you will determine what indeed your level of significance would be. But there will be findings that are not necessarily significant, but you may deem them relevant. And in that context, you want to put them here because you may use them to explain you're moving forward, whether it's doubling down on your findings or whether it's making some adjustments to your program model based on these findings that were, based on these findings. So those are important too. And I think a lot of times it's tempting to just only lay down what is, absolutely statistically significant, but give yourself some wiggle room here. All of your findings are findings, so they are important, and you can color them as you be careful with this. You can color those non-significant findings, or at least use them to justify your changes in programming. I guess that's a better way to say it. Let's rock.
Okay. Here's another example. Methods and results from qualitative abstract.
Yeah.
So it has to do with the quality. So a weak one is, you can see where the arrow is pointing. Themes and patterns were identified among transcribed interview recordings. Then another point you see, participants were ethnically diverse and reported UAI with concurrent binge drinking. So there's no descriptive summary or sample. The number of interviews is missing. No mention about the approach.
Right. And undefined acronym.
Right. I had to stop and look to see what UAI was.
That's right. All bad. Right.
Right. So then we shift to the strong one, and it says in-depth interviews were conducted with 20 substance using HIV negative MSM. Of course, we need that acronym.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
In San Francisco. It talks about the software that's used. An inductive content analysis approach was used to identify themes and patterns, such as pathways for risk behavior, among transcribed interview recordings. Multiple coders were used to identify themes and patterns, and intercodal reliability was assessed. And then the results are very specific. For example, they were ethnically diverse, 65% non-white, binge drinking during the past 3 months, and so you can see the difference there.
Right. And this is really important. So as you get into coding things and kind of, because people make these big statements, and then you then are going to decide how those statements are grouped together. You need to demonstrate that you're following some sort of model, you're following some evidence-based practice, and lay out exactly what your methodology is for this section as well. So they had several coders involved. They talked about some software that they use to do some things. If you're going to have these meetings recorded on Zoom, if you're going to transcribe them, this is where you kind of lay out the methodology behind your process. And remember, qualitative, let me not skip past that either. Most of what we're doing is qualitative. I haven't worked with all of you all, but I don't think too many of us are just straight quant in our community health clinics. So most of what we're doing here will be inherently qualitative designs. You guys have numbers, you have EMRs and things. I know a lot of you all are measuring the HEDIS measures and things too, alongside of how your programming is moving forward, and those are valid measures as well. Those will be mixed methods designs, but for the most part, we're doing a lot of qualitative work amongst us. So it's very important to talk about the qualitative methodology and really cite which ones you're using, because it's easy to say, people themes trended toward X, Y, and Z, but you really need to lay that out. And then the demographics was very important too. Be as specific as you can with demographics and diverse groups. And if they are rural and urban, you want to lay that out as much as possible so you can kind of show how the group is reflected. Let's go.
Okay. So here's an example of results from a quantitative abstract. So the first one is weak. A small percentage of men reported male partner in both study years. Mean number of lifetime male partners did not differ across time or race. Of men who ever had a male partner, 41.3% had a male partner in the past year, similar to 46.5% in 2002. Over half of MSM had multiple partners from 2006 to 2008, similar to 2002. Condom use did not differ. So you see that, and then you switch to the strong one that says it gives the year first. From 2006 to 2008, 5.2% of men reported having a male partner in their lifetime. This did not differ from 2002. Mean number of lifetime male partners did not differ across time or by race. Of men who ever had a male partner, 41.3% had a male partner in the past year, which was similar to 2002. So you see the statistics, you see the time element. Condom use did not differ across time.
Right.
So.
And you see the relevant references too as well. So, and they're not making you work too hard. So that's the key here. As you're reading the good examples, it's doing the work for you. You don't have to figure out what period they're talking about to compare against the other period. Everything is laid out for you, and it's giving a sensible, succinct argument. And that's how you want to lay all of these things out, because you only got 30 lines to work with to represent your entire project. And the better you use all of this space, you remember the general tips at the beginning. Use every line, use all of the space, use it as efficiently as possible. All right, let's rock.
Okay. Conclusion section. This should explain your main findings and why they are important. What is your take-home message? The conclusions should be reasonable and supported by the findings. And avoid using the results will be discussed, these kind of statements, and it should be 2 to 3 sentences.
Yeah. Avoid all of those. Remember, speak in the affirmative voice, speak in the active voice, and avoid saying what you will do at any point, because abstracts are supposed to be definitive. I guess that's all I have to say about that. Let's keep rocking. We're making good time.
Yeah. So here's some additional examples of strong results and conclusions. Between 2006 and 2011, 4,255 partners were elicited from syphilis cases, 3,607 partners from HIV cases. Of these partners, 645 had from syphilis index cases and 691 from HIV cases. Then it has the percentage of syphilis and HIV internet partners. You see the percentages And so here's a conclusion. By developing and maintaining IPS infrastructure in San Francisco, a substantially larger proportion of partners were able to be contacted by disease intervention specialists, and successful outcomes of partner services increased for both syphilis and HIV.
Yeah, there you go. So this is an important section to focus on too. Again, conclusion. Well, every section of the abstract is crucial, but your conclusion kind of says why what you did worked and how what you did worked, and toward the overarching funding objective or the overarching project goal. And this is crucial. So please, as you do review your abstracts, these are great follow points. It's great for you to kind of reflect back on these do's and don'ts with the strong and the weak, and try to strengthen each one of your sections one by one, from your title to your background to your methodology to your conclusion. You want to strengthen each section as much as possible and stick inside of those parameters. If you follow these rules, you'll be good to go. All right, let's go, Alicia.
Okay. Populations of focus and statements of need.
Let's pause really quickly. Do we have any questions before we get into statements of need? I mean, that was a really quick and dirty on abstract. So, I mean, I just want to make sure we're good, and we'll revisit all of this when we put everything together. But are we good? We good, Rhonda? I'll take that as
And Tariq, just so you know, it's 11:38.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, let's rock and roll. Okay. So I hope everybody's good. If any questions did come up in the chat, we'll address them. So let's rock on through this really quick, Alicia. I think we'll buzz on through. I only got 5 more slides, I think.
Okay. All right, cool. So this is the purpose. So you want the geographic catchment area, populations of focus, the demographic characteristics, the nature of the problem within the catchment area.
Yes.
And so this is important for us: need, barriers to care, gaps in service,
Right.
health disparities, the need for an enhanced infrastructure, and resources that may be available.
Yeah, we need all of that in this statement need too. So remember, catchment area. This is all laid out in your RFPs. They're going to be targeting specific catchment areas. You need to demonstrate how you fit within them, and you want to give a big picture to say, Tennessee falls in so and so nationwide, and Rutherford County falls into so and so within Tennessee. So you kind of lay out the big demographic picture. You show how you fall within the catchment area, and then you lay out what the kind of gaps of services are around where you are. Now, this is a lot of what you all are really good at already. So I know we're preaching to the choir here. All right, let's go, Alicia.
Okay. Next slide. So what is the geographic catchment area? So you want to use local data to describe the need and service gaps, state and county public agencies, school system, arrest data, United Way organizations.
Yeah.
The list is there. Yeah.
It's all fair game. Yeah, all of that's fair game. Anything that's kind of nationwide and posted, it's fair game for you. Stay away from private sources. Use nationwide, nationally recognized sources whenever possible, just to keep yourself in the right lane here. All right, let's rock.
Okay. So some examples of national data sources: the U.S. Census Bureau, SAMHSA. It's also recommended that you compile qualitative data, such as data from focus groups, consumers, clients, family members.
Yeah, that's really good stuff too. So you want to have a local source as well. They want you to triangulate as much as possible. So if you grab something from SAMHSA and then something from your local, from Metro TDH or Tennessee Department of Health, and then also your local Metro, and then maybe have some focus groups as well, you have a good cross section to be able to really reinforce whatever your proposal is. Let's go.
All right, well, we are at the end.
Great.
That's it. So this is a great time for questions.
Right. Let's rock and roll. I thought I had a couple of more on the end though. So also impact statements are, again, I'll speak a little bit on this and then I'll give a handout and we'll revisit these as well. So your public impact statements, SAMHSA wants as well. And usually when you're working with TDH, they are interested in these public impact statements, which are sort of a statement of need, but it also reflects how your project is going to impact that on a larger level than just within your own organization. I guess that's a big way to say it. So TDH wants to know, how this is going to address public health in Tennessee as well. And then so your job for addressing, or the way that you say that your individual project fits into our big TCCN network and how we address health disparities statewide and how these numbers do this X, Y, and Z. So your impact statements do exactly as the title suggests, that beyond the abstract, what your project is going to do, it goes into saying how this project will impact public health at large. So I think that's the overarching goal here. Your funders want to know that you know what you know, and they want, remember we talked about this with logic models and everything. At the end of the day, your proposals are going to say the same thing 3 or 4 or 5 times. They want different representation of your study design. So they want logic model. They want it all in little boxes. They want a big long narrative with a bunch of words spelled out in different sections. They want your methodology by itself, so they can look at that and examine it piece by piece. They want your abstracts, and a lot of times they also want your impact statements. It seems redundant, but once you lay it out, and as you all know my style, I think you start from the back and work your way to the front. So if you start with your logic models and your data management plans, and you work your way through your narratives, and you end up writing your abstracts and your impact statements on the back end, you put yourself in a position where you have your project reflected visually in your visual representation, and you have a nice long narrative as well. And the reason that they do it, if this is any comfort to anybody, the reason that they do it this way is because when these things are funded, typically, or when they're evaluated, they're sent to different people in different places. So different reviewers will get different sections of your proposal. Those reviewers will give different grades to different sections. And then ultimately, the score on all of those, the aggregate score on all of those sections, should be how you end up determining who gets what amount of funding. So at the end of the day, the closer all of these sections reflect one another and the stronger each section is, the better off you are and the more likely you are to get at least your proposal discussed and hopefully funded. It's a great place to stop. Q&A.
Tariq, I just think that your point about, I never knew before that different sections may be reviewed by different people, because we're always so used to, well, we already said that. We're not going to say the same thing twice. And so no wonder how some sections don't make any sense if you're looking at it independently. But you also only have so many words. So there's things you want to say that don't fit in any boxes. So then you stuff it in a box that is right, that you had extra words in.
Right.
But understanding that on a government grant, like a SAMHSA grant, like you're describing, that there may be independent reviewers is really a tidbit of information that has changed my existence. So thank you.
So happy to be transformative. But at TDH as well, again, the bigger the agency, the more likely they are to do that. That's for plausible deniability on their end, and it's also so that they can suggest that there's no favoritism going on here. And different sections are sent to people with expertise in different areas, because grants come in on so many different areas, and they want to send them to different reviewers. And the idea of peer review means your name's not supposed to be on it either. The people aren't technically, they're not supposed to know whose proposal they're reviewing, so that they can do it, truly without any conflict of interest. And that way, if you think about it that way, it's easier to answer the questions over and over again, and you just answer them again. If they ask them again, answer them again, and answer it the different way that they want it the different time. And that way you'll be safe. And you want 5 representations of the exact same thing. That's how you write a good proposal, Rhonda. Make sure it's strong like that.
But English class, that's not how they teach us to write.
No, it's not. And they also, that's a great point too. You want to stick with APA style. In English class, they're probably teaching you to write Chicago or Turabian, right? Which is very different than APA. So I should, oh, wow, thank you so much, Rhonda. Stick with, unless otherwise specified, they're going to give you margins and font. But unless otherwise specified, stick with Times New Roman 11 and rock with APA style across the board. They're going to want Arial 11. NIH is going to want Arial 11 for the abstracts. Pay very close attention to who wants what. But if they don't give it to you, default to APA style always. And I'm so glad you pointed that out. And you're right. English class, don't try to make it a novel. Don't try to make it. Don't say, well, we use this word over and over again. Use the word over and over again. This is, how do we say this? In English class, they teach us to make the writing interesting. So you don't want to use the same transition phrase. But in these proposals, you are recommended to use the same. This is relevant to the current project in that, and you can run that over and over again. This is relevant in that. You run that down your lit review over and over again.
But like all the private foundations that fund us all, United Way, all those groups, they want the other style. You've got to make it interesting, and you can't say the same thing to every question. Like it's so all of us on the call, like all the TCCN members, doing a government grant is a completely different thing.
Well, in different areas. So again, you have room for that too. So you don't want to, again, you need to tell what they want you to do. What United Way wants you to do is tell the story. So they're very much interested in the color behind it, but they still want you to deliver on the bottom line. So it's a funny line you have to walk. I totally agree. You want to be careful though, not to lose the content in the transition, because every time you change phrase, you theoretically have to have a different justification. So if you're saying the same thing in a different way, a lot of times you have to explain why you're saying that. You're not saying something different, you're just saying it in a different way. So I'm glad you pointed that out too, Rhonda, because you have to be careful here and you have to know your source. And United Way is a lot more laid back than NIH, and CDC actually is a lot more laid back than SAMHSA actually. But you have to know. I'm so glad you pointed that out, Ron. You have to know who you're talking to. You want to stick to the facts first. So I would argue write it this way first. And if you need to color, it's easier to color it up than it is to, it's easier to make it flavor. It's easier to add salt, right, than to cook with too much salt at the beginning. So I would argue that you should probably write them raw, and then when you're tweaking it for United Way, when you're tweaking it for your different sources, because remember, you want to write these same proposals. You want to write a solid foundation proposal and be able to tweak it for different funding sources as much as possible. So I would argue that your strongest bet is to write it straight and then color it up with lingo and more acronyms and more transition phrases to taste. I would argue write it raw and then season to taste.
Well, as you're thinking of additional questions for Tariq, I'm going to drop into the chat box a link to the survey about this. If you could click on that and just complete the survey while we're all here.
That'd be great. And let's talk. And while you all are doing that, I did want to leave a few minutes to just lay out to talk again about the disparities mini grant. I don't want to call it that. I'm going to get it wrong. Subaward. Our disparity subawards that we would like to get back by the 1st, I believe. I've talked to several of you all with Mary, so I just wanted to since we have another 10 minutes or so, if we have any disparities questions, we've been getting some great ideas about how to leverage the funding in some of our member clinics. So I just wanted to give an opportunity to also discuss.
So my biggest question there, Tariq, like, it doesn't ask anything about how you're measuring your outcomes. Like it is like 3 basic general questions.
Right.
So I'm assuming you do, like you said, don't put more, don't tell us what you ate for breakfast, don't, just answer the question. So
Well, for us, we're pretty laid back now, Rhonda. We're not the NIH. So if you need more, if you need to tell us, if you think that telling us what you had for breakfast helps to tell the story, by all means. We tried to keep them short. I think 300, that abstract length for each question, just for our own reviewers' sake, and we'd like for you to be as succinct as possible. But for us, for the sub-award process, we know a lot about what you're doing already, and this is about how to expand your services. So I don't think we're getting too deep in the woods about your qualitative design per se. We'd like whatever you have on that, because we know that you always count everything. But if you just answer the questions as in every proposal, if you answer the questions as asked, we will be very satisfied. But we'd like a little. If you have some numbers on how you're gonna measure it, that'd be great, Rhonda. Toss them on in there for us. Thank you. But we didn't want this to be too tedious of a process. Again, since you all are already in the camp here, we are trying to make sure that we can leverage these resources to help you all expand services accordingly. So it's not too much of a heavy lift, and we just need to make sure all of our bases are covered on this one.
Tariq, I have a question. This is Elisa.
Hey, come on.
You had mentioned in a PowerPoint qualitative versus quantitative, and you said that for our purposes, we would be more interested in qualitative. Did I get that correct?
Probably. And mixed method. Again, since we do a lot of survey stuff, we do a lot of focus group stuff, all that kind of stuff. So everything, a lot of what we're doing outside of MRIs is going to be self-report. So most of that falls into qualitative. So anytime we're collecting surveys and anytime we're having meetings and doing interventions and, well, I shouldn't say like that, any focus groups and all of that stuff. And I think most of our folks are falling around there. So I would think most of it is qualitative and mixed methods.
Okay, great.
And I could be wrong. I haven't seen everybody's proposal, so some folks may be.
You weren't at the meeting last time, were you? He's a bizarre creature. Very bizarre.
All right. Again, I just want to remind everybody to take the survey, which is in the chat box. If you have any questions, you can also type them in the chat box or unmute. Or comments, thoughts?
Yeah, anything.
Input?
Okay, so we are talking about the
Smile 180.
2023 survey or 2022
No, we're talking about.
survey. That's where I get confused with them.
I don't know. When did he come last? Is he?
Okay, I think we have some background chatter.
I started to say, let's look and see what the most recent acceptance letter.
Lisa, it sounds like you're not muted.